There we go. What's going on, boss man?
I'm well, I'm
That's
well.
good
What's
to
going
hear.
on?
So let's get another episode started with Shout Bob. We're here today with Jason Hall. So I'm gonna let you go ahead and introduce yourself, even though I just introduced you technically.
Yeah, so I'm Jason Hall, a realtor here in the state of Maryland and PA region. Been in the business coming up on 5 years now. On the platform today because I love what ShoutBoB does in terms of highlighting businesses of all types and sorts. So we're gonna have some dialogue today, and I'm gonna let Mr. Lee shoot some questions at me, and I'm gonna answer them as honestly and truthfully as possible because I know he's gonna grill
I
me.
try my best not to grill people. I just kind of go off your story, but go ahead. That's the reason why you're here today. But the reason is telling your story. So go ahead, tell us your story.
Sure. So, born and raised in Baltimore, Maryland. I'm gonna be specific and say West Baltimore because those that are from that community understands that you need to specify where you're from. Went through the Baltimore City Public School education system. Um, Started college, and then while I was in college, decided that it was time to start my career in business. So, prior to being in real estate, I spent probably about 14 years doing everything in banking and finance that effectively you could do. So everything from opening up a checking account at a desk in a bank branch, to managing trading portfolios up to a $500 million. Um, Coming up on about 5 years ago, I made the decision to transition into the business of real estate because very early in my career in banking and finance, I was able to help a lot of just regular run of the mill people. And throughout my career, I lost that, right? So I didn't have the ability. It was more of me helping to manage companies' bottom line versus actually assisting the public. And I wanted to do something that was fun and that was fulfilling again. And around the time, like maybe around the 5 year anniversary of my mom passed in 2013. I transitioned into the business in 2018. And thinking about that, I realized that my mom never got an opportunity to be a homeowner. And that was very big to me because it was a goal she had, but unfortunately, she wasn't going to be able to purchase the biggest house around. So realtors in her day weren't as adamant about assisting her. And I felt like I could make a change. I know everything. I knew everything about the business except the actual realtor side. I understood the
Hmm.
finance and all that good stuff. So I was like, okay, let's leave. So I walked away from a very fruitful career and decided that I was going to build a real estate business
Okay.
from scratch. And at this point, I sit here today. This is around 4.5 years. So January will be my 5 year
Congratulations on that.
milestone in the business. Appreciate that. So yeah, I mean that's me in a nutshell. Husband, father, and dedicated to the business
Okay.
of real estate.
Amazing story, right? So when it comes down to being a realtor, how is the price market determined?
So the market is always going to be determined by a couple of things. So it's going to be determined upon the forces of everything that's going on nationally,
Hmm.
governmentally as well, right? So like the Fed is going to set what interest rates are. In each individual neighborhood or community, you're going to have what's called comparative sales. A comparative sale is where you look at homes of a similar size to the home that you have in question and you
Hmm.
see what it's sold for, right? Now, from a market perspective, you're usually in one of two markets. So you're either in a seller's market or a buyer's market. Simple explanation. The seller's market, which is kind of what we're in right now, is basically in a situation. So I'll use today's market. Right now, we have a shortage of inventory. Um, Simple way of saying that is we have a bunch of people who need homes, but we don't have as many homes as we
Okay.
need to sell them. And then the reverse of that, a buyer's market, you tend to have an abundance of homes, right? But you may not have as many buyers you may not have as many buyers for those homes that matches the amount of property that's
Okay.
available, right? So to generally answer your question, it's really going to be compared to the neighborhood that you're living in and the current market that you're in, whether it's a seller's
Okay.
market or a
In
buyer's
your
market.
field, do you prefer more of the buyer side or the seller side? Is it a commission difference or anything? Really like a two-part question, honestly. Is it a commission difference when you're buying versus, well, when you're selling versus buying, helping a buyer? Or do you like doing either one more? It doesn't really matter.
For me personally, I'm in the business of real estate to
Okay.
serve clients. So whether it's buying, selling, or investing in real estate, that doesn't like I don't have a preference in that way. In terms of how we generate income, uh, not really. There's not necessarily a difference in that. And my thought process or the way I run my business is that if you do things honestly, ethically, and thoroughly, the money will come, right? It's just about how you're handling and marketing and
True.
addressing your
So true.
business.
When it comes down to your business, what do you specialize in, if it's any?
Yeah. So I specialize in, I guess, what I would consider a consultative approach, right? So for me and for the clients that I serve clients from like right now, I'm working with somebody who is in the housing choice voucher home ownership program, which allows them to use their
Hmm.
voucher to purchase a home, all the way to somebody that makes a six-figure income with no financial issues and
Okay.
needs no help, right? So for me, I kind of sort of consult my clients. I go out and make relationships with vendors, so inspectors, lenders, and other partners that can fit every different type of client because my client base is diverse. So my main goal is not just to help them get the goal completed, which is buying, selling, or investing in real estate, but the education. Because you'll be surprised. Like, let's eliminate the fact that financial literacy isn't taught as much as it should, and many folks that aren't homeowners don't know. But there are a lot of people that are homeowners that made it happen. But if you ask them to walk through the steps of how that happened, they have
Okay.
no idea, right? So it's really just about the education because you can do some amazing things in real estate if you have a complete understanding of what you're doing, how to leverage
Okay.
the market, etc.
When it comes to being a realtor, does zoning and zoning laws and regulations of the property, does that really interfere with you selling or anything like that?
It can depend. I mean, that's more so like, people do have like some folks will buy a plot of land and like build on it or whatever the case may be. That's a situation just to give one random. I don't want to get too detailed and confuse folks. But like if you go to buy a piece of land and you want to build a home on it, zoning may come in reference to that. Or sometimes you have folks that they purchase a house that they're utilizing for residential and commercial use. So a good example is in the Baltimore City area of Baltimore, Maryland. You'll have a lot of homes where the lower level of the home might be a some sort of corner store or storefront, and then there's a living situation up top, right? So some of that might involve zoning, but
Okay.
for the most part, no.
When it comes down to the market trends and the changes, how do you stay on beat of it? Because there's a lot of changes that comes like regularly.
So for me, it's a little bit of a different approach. So I take a look at, the market statistics that are provided in the states that I cover on a weekly basis, so I can have an idea of what's going on. I feel the pulse of other professionals in my business, and then I use the knowledge of what I had in my business. And I say it because the data, number one, I'm
Hmm.
big on data, right? So the data is going to tell you what you need to about what's going on in the market, right? But I'm also big on feel. So meaning that when I get into the market and I'm working and servicing
Hmm.
a client, I can have a feel for a neighborhood. I can have a feel for how fast a property is gonna sell. Anisha Berkeley, how are you? I can feel that as well. So I think it's a combination, but for the most part, it is the data. And the reason why I'm a big data guy is because data is not
Okay.
emotional, right? The biggest, I'd say, area of opportunity that I think folks have in real estate is that because real estate is such an emotional process, that they get caught up in the emotion when the data dictates it. A quick example would be if I'm selling my home, for example, the data is going to tell me what
Okay.
I can sell my home for, right? Now, I can make whatever number up in my mind that I just think I want to sell my house for, and that's fine, right? But the data is going to tell me in my neighborhood for a house of my size and my condition what it should sell for, right? And if I follow that data, it allows me and my client to not become
Mm.
emotional in the process.
Okay. That's definitely different. I love that approach. Um, when it comes down to fair market price, could you elaborate on how that happens? If I think you already did it, but
Well, I mean, we can kind of sort of recap it. I think, first off, let me say fair market price isn't, I guess it's
Mhm.
kind of sort of subjective because a client can feel like fair market price is what they want it to be, right? But going
Mhm.
back to what I said a moment ago, the data dictates it, right? So, for example, in refinancing my own home, right, I found out what the value of my particular property was. I was able to look at the comparative sales that the appraiser used to assess the value of my home.
Mhm.
That's the data, right? Now, can that change? Yes. Right. So meaning your house can be worth $150,000 today, and in 6 to 12 months, if everything of your size and condition starts to sell for 200, then potentially it can be worth 200. Right. But in the moment that you're having said question, the data is going to guide you to where you need to be. I think sometimes from a client perspective, if you get caught up in the word
Mhm.
fair, you're losing the fact that this is business, right? Just like the name of the platform,
Mhm.
right? Shout Black Owned Business. This is business, right? So there is not necessarily what's fair in business. It's about what you negotiate.
True way of explaining it. Um, can you explain some of the obstacles and challenges of foreseeing the market at the current value for a buyer or a seller?
Um, I think, and this is going to sound weird because I don't want to be a broken record, but I think the
Mhm.
obstacles are within the buyer, not the market, right? Like the real
Okay.
estate market and the data has existed forever, right? But everyone comes from different racial components, social economic backgrounds, etc. Right? So some folks' experiences are different. So for example, I might sell a home to someone who they're the first homeowner in their family, right? So they don't have a point of reference. Everyone else in their family, they are the point of reference, right? So for them,
Okay.
in assessing the market, how to win a house, how to get it, how to look at an inspection, all those things, right? It becomes uncomfortable and emotional sometimes because there's this fear that, hey, no one else in my family accomplished it, so maybe I won't accomplish it. That has nothing to do with the data, right? That's an
Okay.
internal obstacle. So part of what I do in my business is I'm not just consulting my clients on how to buy a house. I'm consulting them how to navigate the market in the most healthy way for their mental state and to show them what the plan is for, okay, let's get you in the house today. And based off of your long-term goals, what things should you be looking out for in purchasing this house that's going to allow you to get to the next step of whatever your journey is?
Okay. How do you handle disputes when it comes down to buying and selling process?
So let me clarify. Would you mean disputes between like the buyer and seller or disputes between myself and the buyer?
Let's start with the first one first, and then move on to the second one.
Okay, so with a buyer and seller, it's really just evaluating the individual situation to see. Because sometimes what we may deem as a dispute is a question, right? But the
Mm-hmm.
assumption is that it's going to be a dispute. So the first thing that I'm going to do is, if I have a client that presents me a question or a situation in relation to a home, I'm going to discuss with them the question. I'm going to give them my version. Or typically, what most of my clients will do is come to me and say, "Jason, what do you think?" Right? And then we'll
Mm-hmm.
have a dialogue. And then they're going to have a further conversation to assess, okay, how do you think the seller is going to feel about this? Right. And when I talk about having that feel, the thing about the feel as a realtor is I've got a feel for what my market competition is is going to do in representing their client, right? Because the benefit that I have is I represent buyers and sellers. So when a buyer presents me with a situation, I got a very good idea of what I think the listing agent is going to feel like in that situation. And the thing about this transaction is it's all about presentation.
Came back
All
in.
right, good deal. What I was saying is that I think from a negotiation perspective, like just having that initial dialogue with the client, I would say is simple. To answer the second question, which is disputes between myself and my client, I haven't really had disputes, but for me, and the reason why I don't have disputes is because I try to handle things with my clients in a thorough manner. What I mean is, my clients trust me enough that most of the time they would do what I recommend, right? But so I try to explain to them. I know we're buffering. Hold on. So what I was saying was, David, was with my when I'm working with my clients, what I try to do is explain to them the why of what it is I am
Mm-hmm.
doing, and that's what helps to eliminate the disputes. Because most of the time, once again, it's not really a dispute; it's a lack of information that a buyer or a seller wants clarity on.
Okay. When it comes down to the timeline or process involved in either selling or buying a property, what's the average time estimate to, let's say, for a seller, excuse me, a buyer to look to be in a home if they start the process, let's say, today?
It all depends. I'd say on average, you like for a contract to be 30 days, but all contracts are different. It's going to depend on if there's financial assistance that's being given, and that's actually part of the negotiating process, right? So in a market like this, which is very competitive since we have a shortage of property, if I have two buyers, right, and both buyers are interested, or just say maybe not me, there's two buyers in general that are interested in a property, the deal
Mm-hmm.
breaker might be one contract might be for 45 days, the other one might be for 30 days.
Mm-hmm.
The 30-day contract is the one, as long as the rest of the terms are solid, that's going to probably win, right? Because if you look at it from the seller's perspective, the faster that the seller can get to their money is the faster that it works. The last thing I'll say on that is contract time in many cases is really dictated by the caliber of lender that you have. If you have a lender that has properly evaluated your client and prepared them to buy a home, then you have a chance to settle the house faster. The tougher the deal, the longer the settlement.
Mm. That leads into my next question. When it comes down to being a realtor, working with lenders and other, well, I don't know the other ones, but lenders for that matter, right? Is there anyone that you partner with when it comes down to that, or is just based upon the bank or the person that want to buy kind of just say, hey, the bank said this.
So I have multiple lending partners that I work with. The reason why I do it that way is a couple of reasons. Number one, every lender does not operate the same, right? Every lender does not service the same type of client, right? But I do that
Mm-hmm.
also because for me, I do not have a cookie cutter client. So sometimes as a realtor, you can have the same kind of client in terms of financial situation that want to buy homes in the same neighborhood, et cetera, right? So it makes it very vanilla. For me,
Mm-hmm.
my process metaphorically is like Neapolitan ice cream. You might get some strawberry, you might get some chocolate, you might get some vanilla. So as a result, I have multiple lenders, and when I do a consultation with a buyer to help prepare them to buy, I give them multiple recommendations, but the recommendations are based off of what suits them. So I could help two friends buy a house and they could use two completely different lenders because they have two sets of needs.
Okay. And last but not least, while we nearing the end of everything. So when it comes down to I choose you as my realtor, how often could I expect an update from you or hearing back and forth from you?
I mean, you're going to get consistent transparency from me. And that starts from even before we get to the point of the home being purchased. And that's
Hmm.
because it's my job and my responsibility as a realtor to guide you. And I take that responsibility seriously. This is a serious business. For most folks, this is going to be the largest transaction that they ever do in their lives. So transparency is there. Now, I will tell you, here's where I have evolved. Transparency used to be I worked 7 days a week, all hours of night. Um, I, I sold real estate in my bedroom when I was locked in there with COVID-19 last year, right? What I will
Hmm.
tell you is that I am doing a better job of adhering to business hours. So right now, I probably work about 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. After 9 p.m., I separate and I decompress. But should there be an emergency that needs to be addressed that arises, which happens, I address that as well. But I'm not hard to find. The only promise that I make to my clients is that if they reach out to me and they need assistance, if I'm with someone else, out of respect for that person's time, I'm not going to hold a phone conversation with someone on someone else's time, but I'll always return a call. And I think, every client that's worked with me would say that it's never been hard for them to find me, and that's before buying the house, during buying the house, or after buying the house.
So I'd like to ask all my guests, what would you like if you had a chance to name this segment? What would you like to name it?
Um, I like to name the segment growth. And,
Growth.
I say growth because I really see that as the metaphor for my career trajectory and getting to this point. I grew to this. I didn't wake up one day and just decide I was going to start a business and that it was going to be real estate. I grew and I had to get my hands dirty. I had to learn some things. It wasn't a fast journey, right?
Definitely is not
From a
fast.
I know sometimes from a business perspective, especially online, everyone makes it seem like you just wake up and become successful, but it takes time. And sometimes you have to start from scratch. You've got to fail. And the success of my business today has all come from growth.
Okay. Now, I'd like to give everybody a chance before we get out of here to drop your information, let people know how to reach out to you, how to get in touch with you or hold of you if they ever need your assistance or services in the future.
Sure. So you guys can follow me on IG on this same platform here at J Hall, JAYHALL agent. I'm always on posting stuff in reference to business. You can shoot me a DM or my contact information is in my link tree in my bio. I'm an open book. I'll answer questions. The only thing I will not do is I don't service or answer questions for folks that already are working with an agent out of respect for the business. That's not my client. I don't do unethical business that way. But if I can help, I'm here to help. And that's what I'm here for.
Okay, that's fair enough. I want to thank my guests for coming in, sitting with us for this last couple of minutes, and saying just to hear your story and everything. I want to thank you for your story today and coming on. It's a gracious, gracious blessing just to have you on to tell your part, and we truly appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks again, David, for allowing me on your platform, man. Last thing I want to say is I love what you're doing. And I hope to see other business owners come on as you grow this platform because the reason why I agreed to be on the platform and I wanted to do it was because you've given a voice to a lot of entrepreneurs who have not gotten to that pinnacle yet, and you're giving them a ground floor, and I love that, and I can see where the platform is going. So I'm gonna continue to support it, man, and whatever my business can do to support ShoutBoB, we're here.
All right. I want to thank you again. Before we get out of here, any guests that you know of a black-owned business that thinks they want to tell their story or you know you want to hear their story, DM us, let us know. We'll reach out to the business or have them reach out to us directly through the DM as well. Again, thank you again for watching. Y'all folks have a great and blessed evening. Thank you again, Mr. Hall.
Anytime.